Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. My next guest is this is a person that's been here before, and we were happy to have him, and we're happy to have him back right now. He is the man, some would say affectionately, some would say unaffectionately known as the border czar for the United States, the one and only Mr. Tom Homan. How are you, sir? How's everything going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again, Stephen A.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So, considering the fact that Trump returned to office January 21st, I mean, over these last few months, how would you describe how things have been going thus far with ICE, with border security, closing of the borders, et cetera?
Operationally, it's been going fantastic, better than I ever thought it'd go. I mean, I worked for Trump 45. We had the most secure border ever in history of this country then. And we came back a second time after 4 years of an open border. I knew we had a lot of work to do. I knew we could secure it again because we know how to do it. I did not know how quick it could happen. The men and women of the Border Patrol had that border locked down in like 7 weeks, which was, even I didn't think it happened that fast. And 7 weeks. I mean, President Trump did in 7 weeks what the Biden administration either couldn't or wouldn't do in 4 years. So that was fantastic. As of today, Stephen, we got the most secure border in the history of the nation, even better than Trump 45. I mean, illegal immigration down 96%. The number of people crossing the border are below 100, and we had up to 15,000 under the last administration some days. So it's terrific. And when you have that secure border, you got 96% less people are coming. That means 100% of Border Patrol are on the line doing their job. They're not making sandwiches, taking care of humanitarian crisis, which means they're stopping more fentanyl coming in. Sex trafficking women and children have drastically reduced. Illegal immigration is drastically reduced. No inspected people on the terrorist watch list is non-existent. So the country's safer because of it, and our national security is stronger because of it. Interior enforcement operations, we're doing really well. I'm not satisfied. I think we can be doing more. And now we have the big, beautiful bill. We'll have the resources to do more. Because I think I mentioned on your last show, Stephen, there's 600,000, by last estimate, 600,000 illegal aliens in this country with criminal convictions walking the streets. So we got to find those folks, which requires more resources. So we're doing great interior. We just need to do more of it.
You say that there's more that you could be doing, and I heard what you just said, but considering the numbers that you threw out there, obviously one would surmise that you've been very, very effective in terms of what your agenda is. What right now are your biggest obstacles or your present issues that you would like America to know about?
Sanctuary cities is a bump in the road. It slows us down. We're still going to do the job. It's less efficient. And let me explain what I mean by sanctuary jurisdictions. Sanctuary jurisdictions do not let police officers work with ICE on anything related to an illegal alien. But more importantly, sanctuary jurisdictions don't allow us access to the jails and the prisons, right? And I've said from day one, President Trump wants to prioritize public safety threats and national security threats. Well, where's the easiest place to find public safety threats? Those locked in a jail cell that a local jurisdiction put in a jail cell because obviously they're a public safety threat at flight risk. That's why we're sitting in the jail. If we could do that across the country, it's safer for the officer, it's safer for the alien, and it's safer for the public. Releasing a public safety threat back in the public, it's just ridiculous, right? Especially when you can turn them over to ICE and let us handle them when you're done with them. And so that's a big obstacle because in my day, we didn't have this back when I was an agent a long time ago. One agent can arrest one bad guy in a jail. After they're done with him, we can either take custody of him in the safety and security of the jail. Now they release them back into the public because we're not allowed in that jail. Now we got to send a whole team to go find a public safety threat. Number one, doesn't want to be found. Number two, we got to find him on his turf. We have access to who knows what weapons. It's less efficient. It's more dangerous for everybody. More dangerous for the alien because anything can happen during a street arrest. It's more dangerous for the agent, and it's much more dangerous for the public. So sanctuary cities have slowed us down, but that's why President Trump 3 weeks ago instructed us to prioritize sanctuary cities, send additional resources to sanctuary cities so we can arrest more of those public safety threats walking the community.
Well, listen, when you say sanctuary cities, I mean, obviously we know what you're talking about, but I'd like to know if there's a city that stands out in your mind, because there were issues in L.A. Obviously, there was issues in Chicago and Illinois. Obviously, now you guys are, the Trump administration has filed suit against New York City because of sanctuary laws that's impeding what you're trying to do. Is there anyone that stands out as more egregious in your mind than others, or is just painting with a broad brush? Sanctuary cities overall are just an incredible problem.
Sanctuary cities overall are a big problem, but look, what's that biggest problem? Our biggest problems are our biggest cities, where there's a larger illegal alien presence. Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, right? They're the three big ones, because we know they have a huge illegal alien population. The crime rate in all those three cities is pretty high. And so that's where our biggest problems are, but we're still not going to take the eye off Portland or Seattle or some of these other sanctuary cities, or Boston. But the three big ones are Chicago, LA, and New York.
In the past, I remember Gavin Newsom and you going at it, and Gavin Newsom daring you guys to arrest him. Basically accusing ICE, accusing yourself and others of fragmenting families, pulling people apart, taking kids from their parents, et cetera, et cetera. He said these things. Even Donald Trump came out and said, you know what, I'd probably take him up on his offer and arrest him. I'd like to know why didn't you do that at that particular moment in time when 4,000 National Guardsmen were sent to the city of Los Angeles because of something people were saying was happening in a 2-block radius. I'd like to know why you didn't take Donald Trump up on that offer, or Gavin Newsom up on his offer, and arrest the governor of California at that particular moment in time. Is that just, I mean, normally when we've seen you, you said you wouldn't hesitate to arrest an elected official. He was daring you to do it. How come that didn't happen?
Well, first of all, I'm not a prosecutor. That's up to the Department of Justice. That they need to open a criminal case and prosecute. But that was really taken out of context, because I did an interview in L.A. and that's when I warned. I said, look, you cannot support ICE. Shame on you, but you have the right to do that. You have the right to protest ICE. You got your First Amendment rights. Protest all you want. But what you can't do is cross that line. If you knowingly impede an ICE officer, that is a felony. If you knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien, that's a felony. If you put hands on an ICE officer, that's a felony. I said, so when you cross that line, we're going to prosecute. And Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice said, and then President, zero tolerance. We're not going to tolerate it. So the reporter asked me, well, would you arrest Gavin Newsom if he crossed that line? I said, certainly would. I'd arrest anybody. Because what we've heard for the last 4 years, no one's above the law. We either is the governor. If he crossed that line, knowing he violates the law, I will seek prosecution through DOJ. Now, did he cross that line? He hasn't actively put hands on an officer. He hasn't actively knowingly harboring and concealing an illegal alien that I know of. But that's DOJ's job. So if DOJ decides he crossed that line, they'll prosecute him. Now, we got a member of Congress that crossed that line. We got a couple of judges that crossed that line. So again, we're going to hold people accountable. You would think Gavin Newsom, as the governor of New York, the governor of California, would understand this. His number one responsibility is protection of his communities, protection of his citizens in the state of California. He knows we're arresting public safety threats. He knows we're arresting national security threats. Why wouldn't he not work with us to make his streets safer? I'm not asking him to be an immigration officer. I will never ask him to be an immigration officer. I'm asking him to be a law and order governor that lets his cops work with our cops to remove public safety threats. Not help us find illegal aliens that are here in the country illegally. Help us find the illegal aliens that are a public safety threat. That should be a nonpartisan issue, I would think. So that's where that all came from.
But where it becomes a bit more complicated, sir, if I may say, is that, for example, the Trump administration sues Eric Adams in New York City over sanctuary city laws. I remember back in February, you warned Adams on national television that if he failed to deliver, you would be in his office up his butt, if I remember correctly. That was the quote. And now here we are. The Trump administration is filing suit against the city of New York. Mayor Eric Adams has been on the record saying he has nothing to do with the laws. He didn't make the laws. He's just following them. You say the same thing. You're following the rules. So you're following the law. Who's right? Who's wrong here? Because if you're in a sanctuary city and those are the laws on the book that have been put in place by city council and other elected officials and what have you, and that's the law on the book, then who's in violation? Is it you? Is it them? Who is it? A lot of us don't understand.
The issue in New York, the two people I put most blame on are the governor of New York, Governor Hochul, because she has pushed the bail reform laws where NYPD arrests an illegal alien criminal. For instance, these two people who shot the off-duty CBP officer, release them straight from the precinct without calling ICE because of bail reform. And also, the sanctuary policies in New York City were created under Mayor de Blasio years ago. In the city,
yes, 2014.
And the city council pushed that sanctuary city policy. What I'll say about Mayor Adams had an agreement with me, us, the government, to allow our agents back into Rikers Island, so we can arrest public safety threats back in Rikers Island. That was the right thing to do. However, the city council quickly got upset and filed a lawsuit, which now it's all that's on hold, right? So that's who I put the blame on. I put the blame on the city council that refuses to allow Mayor Adams to let us in Rikers Island. That attacks us, you know, that constantly thwarts ICE from working with NYPD. But the city council, I think, is the major problem there.
I don't blame you for saying that. I mean, I hear you, and I definitely hear you on de Blasio, because in 2014, I mean, we know he's the father of all of that in terms of sanctuary cities. Even though it's been there since the late 80s, the reality is that what he did in 2014, you're making a valid point there. It's just that Christie, known for Homeland Security, came out and called out Eric Adams specifically. She mentioned his name in his administration, and she was blaming him. So there's a difference between you two there, but that's fair enough. Having said all of that, as we sit here today with the issue of migrants in this country, one of the things that people have lamented is the fact that you're supposed to be in pursuit of criminals. However, we're seeing folks that, according to the elected officials, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, and others, you have an abundance of citizens in the city that are employed, that pay their taxes, that are law-abiding citizens, are not bothering anybody, yet they're the ones being detained per se. What do you say to that? How prevalent is that of an issue in your mind, or is it much ado about nothing from the mouths of those elected officials?
Well, first of all, they're not law-abiding citizens. They're illegal aliens who enter this country illegally, which is a crime, first of all. So let's talk about the facts. So the facts which much of the media isn't covering. You know, I talked to the press yesterday in front of the White House, and this came up because I said I'm sick and tired of reading the stories that ICE is arresting. They're not arresting mostly criminals, they're arresting mostly non-criminals, and that we're detaining, our detention is mostly non-criminals. I read one story that says, you know, how dare ICE? The facts are that less than 1% of illegal aliens are deported from this country were convicted of murder. I mean, are you kidding me? So an illegal alien has to commit a murder before it's a meaningful deportation? That's just ridiculous. There's nothing in immigration law that says you got to commit yet another crime beyond illegal entry to be deported. That's not what the law says at all. But here are the facts. I looked at the numbers yesterday. A majority of those in our detention facilities are criminals. But now the left is saying they're not criminal enough. You know, he only has 2 DUIs. He's not a murderer. He's not a rapist. No. 10,000 people a year die from DUIs. That's a public safety issue. If you're in the country illegally and you drive on our streets on a DUI, you need to be locked up. You need to be deported. That is the way it should be. So now the media is saying they're not criminal enough. But here's the facts. The majority of those in detention are criminal, have a criminal history. Who are the rest of the people in our detention? Because they say they're non-criminals. So let's talk about who they are. Number one, they're expedited removal cases. By law, by federal statute, they're required to be detained. We don't have a choice. Mandatory detention, that's the way it's spelled out in law. So they're in our detention. We don't have a choice. That's federal law requirement. The others, a lot of national security threats. Like we arrested over 300 Iranian nationals. I don't know if any of them have a criminal history, but they are a national security threat based on solid intelligence. So yeah, we're locking up national security threats that don't have a criminal charge. So that's who else we have in detention. And lastly, who do you have in detention? You have people who've had due process at great taxpayer expense. A federal judge orders them removed. They come on our radar. Our job by statute is to execute these orders, remove those people. That's who's in detention. People that the courts have ordered us to remove, people that Congress gives the authority to arrest and deport, But you're talking about criminals, national security threats, mandatory detention by federal law. That's who's on detention. It's not discretion. Let's go arrest an illegal animal that has no issue and just lock them up. We still prioritize the worst first, and the other ones that are mandatory by statute. Now look at who are we arresting. So I looked at the numbers yesterday. The last report I saw, about 130,000 total interior enforcement arrests by ICE. 90,000 of those were criminals. Do the math, that's 70%, 69.25. 70% of those we arrested have a criminal history. And again, who are the rest of them? Final order cases who had due process and became fugitive, ignored the court order. If you and I ignored a court order, we'd be in jail. And national security threats. We've arrested a lot of national security threats, especially after the Iran conflict. So that's who we're arresting. But I've said from day one, Stephen, I said, we will prioritize public safety threats and national security threats. But if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. If we find you, especially in sanctuary cities, where they force us, as we just discussed, to go into the neighborhood and find somebody that they've released, when we find that person, many times they're with others, either at a work site or in the community. If they're in the country illegally, we're not going to tell ICE, ignore the oath you took, ignore the law you're required to enforce, walk away from them. We're not going to do that.
But respectfully, sir, that's you. And that's why I don't think you hear your name when people are denigrating what's transpiring in this nation in terms of deportation issues and what have you, because your message has been consistent. However, when you look at folks on the campaign, whether it was the left or the right, you heard folks on the right as Trump was pursuing regaining the presidency, where they were talking about how the criminals have got to go. We're going to target them and we're going to go after them. So when you say that, I get where you're coming from. The difference is that the impression was given, everything was in an effort to get the worst of the worst out of the country. And what folks on the left and folks that are just average American citizens are pointing out is that they don't see that enough of that is happening, that quote unquote innocent civilians in this country that happen to be in this country are the ones being targeted, where you're going to a school or you're going to their workplace or what have you, and you're taking them away in an effort to deport them. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, we don't do operations in schools. We don't do operations in churches. I read that all the time too. It's a fake story, but we are prioritizing public safety threats. That's why the majority of people we arrest are criminals. The majority of people we're detaining are criminals. That's just a fact. But just because we're prioritizing public safety threats doesn't mean everybody else gets a pass. Because if the message we want to send, Stephen, to the whole world, you can enter the country illegally, it's a crime, don't worry about it. You can show up in court or not show up in court and get a final order of deportation from a federal judge, don't worry about it. As long as you don't commit another crime, you're home free. That's not the message we got to send to the whole world, because if you do that, you're never going to fix the issue. People are going to realize I can get to the United States, I can cheat the system and make a false asylum claim. I'll later be ordered removed, but I never got to leave because I didn't commit another crime beyond illegal entry. There are millions of people standing in line today trying to be part of this country, the greatest country in the world, in my opinion, and they're taking their tests, they're paying their fees, they're doing their background investigation to be part of the greatest country on earth. They're sitting in the back seat while millions of people came to our border and cheated the system. When I say cheat the system because of this, what people don't talk about, they say, well, these are all asylum seekers. Okay, you can call them asylum seekers because you're seeking asylum. But if you look at the numbers, over the last decade at an immigration court, 9 out of 10 asylum seekers at our border end up with an order removal, because they're not really asylum seekers. They're not escaping fear and persecution from their home government because of race, religion, and political affiliation. They're coming here for a better life. And I get that. They're coming here for a job. I get that. But that's not asylum. So we can't send the message to the whole world, ignore law. Even though we're a nation of laws, you can go ahead and break the law, enter the country illegally. And here's what happens when we send that message. You overwhelm the Border Patrol, like what happened during the Biden administration. 70% of agents are no longer on patrol because they're taking care of this humanitarian crisis that was created by open borders and not enforcing the law. And when you overwhelm the Border Patrol, that's when the fentanyl came across to kill 250,000 Americans. That's when sex trafficking was at an historic high. That's when a record number of terrorists crossed that border. Under Trump 45, we had a total of 14. Under Biden, over 400. So when you don't enforce the law and you don't show consequences, people feel welcome to come across. It overwhelms the Border Patrol, where they're dealing with, now they're dealing with this humanitarian crisis, but their national security job It's fractured because they created gaps in the system because there are areas of the border where there's not a single green uniform because they're busy changing diapers, making baby formula, and making hospital runs, whatever is required. It's important we send a message to the whole world. There's a right way and wrong way to come to this country. And if we don't enforce immigration law beyond the criminal, that's not the message. We can't send that message. That's the message the Biden administration sent. The Biden administration said, cross the border illegally, you won't be removed, you'll be held for 24 hours, we'll give you a free plane ticket to the city of your choice, we'll put you in a free hotel room, we'll give you 3 meals a day, we'll give you free health care, and in 120 days, we won't give you work authorization, which is really the reason that we came here. That's why you saw the crisis you saw. We have to show the world we're the most welcoming nation on the planet. We welcome more refugees in this country than any nation in the world. Well, there's a right way and wrong way to do it. We cannot support illegal activity. We just can't do it. It sends a bad message to the whole world.
I don't think anybody can refute that there's a right and a wrong way to do it. But I recently recall reading a story about a Little League baseball coach in New York City took action against ICE agents, who approached his players during practice, asking where they were from and where their parents were from. So when you hear about stories like that, and then you take into account how you say you got to come in the right way, you got to get in line. One could easily argue that the Trump administration is going about the business of at least giving the impression that there is no line because nobody's getting in because we're too busy trying to get a whole bunch of people out. How much, if at all, is that some kind of is that a conflict potentially for you and what you do based on the message that you just sent that I don't think anybody can refute? Is it challenging for you considering what the actions of ICE under your leadership and others, the kind of impression it's giving to those who want to come in legally, how the road to citizenship or to at least entering the country is far more difficult today than it ever was been. I'm talking about legally.
Right. Well, we're dealing with the aftermath of 4 years of open borders where millions of people enter the country illegally without proper vetting. For instance, we arrested over 300 Iranians that are considered national security threat. Most of them came in and released under Biden administration. They weren't properly vetted. Secretary of Homeland Security was Alejandro Mayorkas said, everybody releases properly vetted. No, they weren't. I've been doing this a long time. We don't have access. El Salvador and some of these countries, they don't have an NCIC like we do. We don't have access to criminal information. So when he says they're vetted against NCIC, our system, NCIC III, which is the state system. So unless they were criminally arrested in the United States, they're going to come back clean. Like the Iranians, you think Iran, when they say vetted, you think Iran's sharing with us any national security information that these people may be a national security threat? China, Russia, where tens of thousands came in? No. So we're dealing with the mess that Biden created, trying to find these people and make sure we identify the public safety threats and national security threats. And the data proves that's exactly what we're doing. But as far as these, I never heard about that one case about Little League. I'll certainly look into it. When I hear of something, whether I read it in the media, I hear something that I think's over the line, I make a phone call and find out, give me the facts on this. Many times the facts are far different from what the media is reporting. But I want people to understand, because of the false media out there, and there's a lot of it. I read it every day, right?
True.
But because of the false media saying that ICE isn't arresting criminals or arresting Little League baseball players or they're raiding schools or churches, which we don't, when media puts it out on top of members of Congress who compare ICE to the Nazis, to terrorists, to racists, now you got those people on the left, not the protesters who have the right to protest, but it's that small fraction that takes it beyond protest to criminal activity. Now they feel emboldened to attack ICE. Hey, a U.S. senator just called them terrorists. They must be really bad people. They're just looking for something to give them justification to take action. And that's why I said 2 months ago, I think I maybe said it on your first show, Steve, I don't remember. I said if the rhetoric doesn't stop, this hateful rhetoric, it's a matter of time before someone dies or there's going to be bloodshed. Unfortunately, I was right because we had one man killed when he attacked a Border Patrol station, a Border Patrol facility, and was shooting the facility up. He picked the wrong facility to shoot at because that was actually a SWAT team training facility. And unfortunately, they took his life to stop him from shooting. A couple of days beyond that, you had 10 people show up at an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, taking shots, trying to ambush ICE officers. and a law enforcement officer was shot in the neck, and quickly controlled that. So this rhetoric is causing the 830% increase on attacks on ICE officers, whether it's doxing them, doxing their spouses, doxing their children. There are children of ICE officers being bullied in churches and schools because others think their father or their mother, whoever happens to be the agent, is a racist. So this isn't acceptable. So yesterday, when I talked to me, I said, we got to stop this hateful rhetoric. And for members of Congress to compare ICE to the Nazis, you're kidding me? ICE is enforcing the law that Congress enacted. So if ICE are racist for enforcing the law, what's that make Congress? They wrote the law, right? So rather than Congress vilifying the men and women of ICE who are enforcing laws they wrote, using money they appropriate ICE to enforce that law, why don't people protest Congress and say, we don't like the immigration law, you need to change it? That's where you need to protest. Or when ICE are executing orders issued by a federal judge saying you must deport this person. So ICE is out there enforcing law Congress enacted, executing orders issued by a federal judge. These men and women aren't making this up. And the false media is causing this. And I'm telling you what, it isn't over yet. Because I would think people would learn their lesson after these two incidents where gunfire was exchanged. But it seems to be picking up. And I don't think it's over. And I'll tell you, I go to bed every night, honest to God, and pray that everybody goes home to their families that day. ICE officers, protesters, I don't want to see this. I've seen this play out before. I said it's going to happen again, and it has. I just want it to stop.
Got you. I remember, it's an interesting question I got to throw you because I know you only got a few minutes. I only got a couple of questions left. Mr. Homan, I remember months ago when people were talking about migrants being separated from their families. You brought up how, if I remember correctly, how there are American citizens who happen to be criminals. They're separated from their families. We don't say anything then. So, you know, why are we saying something now? I remember that statement. Maybe it was from you, maybe it was somebody else. If it was not from you, I apologize. But I'm thinking about ICE agents, and I'm thinking about particularly in the city of Los Angeles, where it was a big deal about them not identifying themselves, wearing masks, et cetera, et cetera. And you spoke about that, okay? I want to know, when people bring this stuff up, and I think it's out of pocket, make no mistake about it. I'm not an advocate of that, calling them, comparing them to Nazis and all of this other stuff that's ridiculous. The flip side to it, however, is that police officers throughout the country, they're not wearing masks. They arrest folks. They incarcerate. They assist in incarcerating folks. Their identities are not concealed. Why should that be granted to ICE agents when that's not even granted to police officers throughout this country?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I go out in operations all the time. Everybody's is identified. They all wear a patch that says ICE, HSI, DEA, FBI. Whether it's tactical gear or whatever, if they're not wearing so tactical gear has identifiers on them, first of all. If they're not wearing tactical gear, if it's a non-tactical arrest, ICE agents are required to show their identification. This is who I am. Here's why I'm arresting you. That's required. And I've been out there. I haven't seen anything that's different from that. And I've been out there on a lot of operations, first of all. But the tactical gear, Stephen, look at the tactical when you see these. When you see the look at the tactical, you see an emblem who they're with. Face mask. No other law enforcement agency uses them. Well, name another law enforcement agency has a 130% increase in violence against them. These officers, as I said before, their families are being doxxed, their children are being doxxed. They're trying to protect their families because their face is being, I've seen it. We got investigations. Their face is being put on telephone poles. Their home addresses are being put out there. There's websites where people are taking pictures of ICE agents and putting it on a website, which again causes attacks on these officers and their families. There's been home addresses given. Look, I know for a fact because I had 1,000 protesters at my house. I accept that kind of the United States borders are. I expect to hate, and I don't care. And they can hate me all they want. I think we're saving lives every day. But these men and women who strap a gun to their hip every day and wear a Kevlar vest to try to keep themselves safe, that take this hate, they're trying to protect themselves and their families because we have many investigations of their pictures being online, on telephone poles, people showing up their homes because they do all this facial recognition and all this dark web crap. But there's members of Congress. So I guess, so again, name another law enforcement agency that's 130% increase in assaults. You won't find it. And number two, there's actually congressmen that want to pass legislation to unmask people. At the same time, where was the legislation to unmask Antifa? Where was the legislation to unmask BLM? When we had all those protests that turned violent. Where is the legislation for LA for all the people that, not the protesters, but those who attacked ICE and attacked the National Guard and attacked Los Angeles Police Department, wear a mask? Where's the legislation for that? So again, they're putting politics over safety. It's just a political football they're playing with. So if they want to do legislation, take a mask off fire stations, then add BLM and add Antifa and add these people who cross the line. You shouldn't be allowed to protest and wear a mask. Where's that legislation? Because when it does turn violent, we didn't know who those people are. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but that is the reason. The reason is because there's no other law enforcement agency with that kind of 830%. It's even I can't believe it when I say it. And plus, they're not dealing with ISIS, dealing with there are apps on cell phones. I'm not a social media guy. There's apps where you can download an app to say, here's where ISIS is operating right now. Here's where officers are serving a warrant right now. Here is the person serving a warrant. Here is Tom Homan. Here's his picture. Here's his home address. That's why they wear a mask, to try to protect their families.
Last question for you, sir, and I really appreciate it.
And let me add one more thing, Stephen. This is important.
Please. Go ahead.
When you mentioned about the family separation, that was me. It's a great memory. So I want to add one thing that you won't hear in the media. And I've been pushing it, and no one's covering it.
Okay.
The last administration released 500,000 children came to this country, separated from their families, put in the hands of criminal cartels, be trafficked into this country. The last administration lost track of 300,000. Couldn't find, or they weren't returning phone calls. They weren't, when they checked up on them, they just weren't there. So President Trump committed, we're going to find every one of these children. And I've said many times, many of these children will be with family. They'll be safe. They just left because they don't want to go home. Some are going to be in forced labor. Some are going to be in forced sex trafficking. Guaranteed, because my 40 years, that's what I know is going on. We've already found 13,000 of these kids, over 13,000 of these kids. And we got over, the sponsors, we got 40 criminal prosecutions going on. Some of these children were in trafficking. They were either labor or sex. Many of these children were safe. But we already found over 13,000 of them, and we're not going to rest till we find every one of them. That is one of the things President Trump gave me 3 things to do: secure the border, run a deportation operation, and find these children. So I want to give you that update, because I know you'll post it and you'll talk about it. We already found 13,000 of these kids, so God help, we'll find every one of them.
Last question. I appreciate that, sir. Last question. Considering the opposition you guys are facing, and it's not just from the left, it's just it could be from American citizens who just disagree with the position that you guys take. It's one thing for you to go out there and to do your job, but as you know better than me, much gets politicized in this day and age, and it foments animosity, aggression, an acerbic attitude towards people like yourself and various others. Do you see the job getting easier or harder, even as you have now secured the border to a large degree? Do you see this getting uglier before it gets better? Because that clearly appears to be the case, and it doesn't escape me that midterm elections are a year away, and we're closer to a presidential election in 3 years instead of 4, et cetera, et cetera. These things tend to happen around that particular moment in time, because obviously it could potentially influence elections. Do you see things getting worse before they get better?
I hope not. But you just said something that I've been talking about for weeks. I think a lot of this false narrative being pushed out, and a lot of the hate against ICE, and a lot of hate against the Trump administration is because of midterms. They're going, and I said from day one, when we got back in, I said, they're going to vilify ICE and the Border Patrol. They're going to attack everything we do. They're going to try to control the narrative, because they want people to they want us to lose support of the American people. That's exactly what they're doing. I don't think they're lying just to lie. There's an end game here. The end game is to turn people against this administration. But that's why I'm out there every day, numerous times a day, trying, like we spoke in the last few minutes here. Here are the actual numbers. I'm pushing out as much as I can. We got a lot of people in the administration who are trying to push the actual numbers. I wish people would just go to ICE.gov. Look who's in our detention. You know, all these attacks, ICE detention facilities are terrible. Go to ICE.gov, look at our detention standards. The highest detention standards in the industry, better than any jail or prison in this country, are ICE facilities. So we just got to try to control the narrative. And of course, it's, you know, there's more them than us, but I hope it doesn't get worse. You know, I'm not running popularity contests. They can hate me all they want. I don't care. But the men and women, whether you know, the men and women of ICE and the Border Patrol, they're mothers and fathers too. And I say this all the time. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day they go to work. They go home with terrible, terrible images that they saw. They see children in sex trafficking, children in forced labor. They see a lot of terrible things. And I wish people understand they're human beings. They're simply enforcing law. They're trying to make this America safe again. So I wish the rhetoric would go away, but I don't think it will because, as you said, midterms are coming up. And there's a lot of people out there that's going to put politics over public safety, politics over truth.
Last question. Put a number on it. How many ICE agents are there out there? Like when you talk about their mothers, their fathers, etc. How many people are we talking about?
Well, the deportation officers just shy of 5,000. HSI special agents, probably about 7,000. There's about 13,000 armed law enforcement officers, nice, either from Homeland Security investigation, enforcement removal operations. Those whose main job is enforcement and immigration law, less than 5,000, dealing with over 20 million illegal aliens in this country. They've been using that number. Oh, there's 12 million illegal aliens. We've been using that number for 20 years. I was using it back.
Well, why is the number so low? Why is the number so low? Is it because they don't want the job, or is it because they're not qualified to get it? What's the why the number so low?
Because ICE has never been appropriated funding to hire additional people. Border Patrol gets plus up all the time. God bless the Border Patrol. I was one of them. They plus up the Border Patrol. Everybody at Border Patrol arrested, where do they go? They come to ICE for transportation, detention, removal. For some reason, ICE never got plus up at the level of Border Patrol. Now, for the first time that I've been around, now we got a plus up with 10,000 agents. And as far as, no, they all want to be. Recruiting numbers of the Border Patrol last month was the highest it's ever been. ICE, we have thousands. I had to shut down my LinkedIn account because I got thousands of people saying I want to come back. So I had to shut down my account just because I was overwhelmed. So right now, recruiting is sky high. We already got thousands of people lining up to come back. We got thousands of people applying for a job. So now that ICE is allowed to do their job, which they weren't, the last 4 years, recruiting was non-existent. People were quitting and retiring because they weren't allowed to do the job they took an oath to do. Now that they see us doing this job, recruiting is not an issue. We got thousands of people standing in line. Now we got the big, beautiful bill. We'll be hiring thousands of people and hopefully be more efficient and quicker on removing public safety threats because we have more boots on the ground.
I promise you, this is, I know I lied because it was my last question, but you brought up the detention facility. I'm thinking about Alligator Alcatraz, the detention facility in Florida, Everglades. You know, it's been accused of only detainees, you know, allowing detainees one meal a day, not being allowed daily showers, being kept in mosquito-filled cage-like units around the clock, along with physical assault and excessive use of force by guards and a lack of medical care. I wanted to throw that out as the very, very last question to give you an opportunity to respond to anything that you want to say in defense of those allegations that have been leveled against you guys.
I think it's all false narrative. I haven't been down to Alligator, Addy, but I'm making a trip down there so I can see for myself.
All right. Mr. Tom Homan, the Border Czar himself, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Always appreciate your time, sir. I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you making time for the show, as you always have. Thank you so much. Hope to have you on in the future, because I know more stuff is going to be happening.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.